The sound hits you before the cold does. A sharp, distinct strike of leather and iron against wet cobblestone. You stop walking. The street is pitch black, smothered in a yellow, sulfurous fog that burns the back of your throat. You hold your breath, straining to hear over the hammering of your own pulse. For a moment, there is only the distant, muffled groan of the river and the rattle of a carriage miles away. Then, 30 feet behind you, cloaked in the impenetrable mist, a scrape, a foot shifting its weight. Someone is there. Someone who stopped exactly when you stopped. You force yourself to keep moving, quickening your pace, your hands buried deep in your coat pockets. The air in London's East End tonight does not feel like air. It feels like a dirty, damp rag pressed over your face. It smells of raw sewage, of slaughterhouses, of coal dust and cheap gin and boiling animal bones from the glue factories. You are walking through Whitechapel in the autumn of 1888, and you have just realized the most terrifying truth of this place. You are entirely, utterly on your own. You turn a corner, the weak, sputtering amber glow of a single gas lamp offering a meager island of light in an ocean of shadows. As you pass beneath it, the light barely touches the towering, soot-stained brick walls that press in on both sides. The alleys here are not designed for people. They are jagged cracks between tenements, dark veins feeding into the heart of the greatest, richest, most powerful empire on earth. But the empire does not care about Whitechapel. Here, 70,000 souls are packed into a labyrinth of rotting timber and crumbling brick. And tonight, every single one of them is terrified. The footsteps behind you resume. Not rushing, just keeping pace. Deliberate, confident. You do not look back. If you look back, you acknowledge them. If you acknowledge them, it becomes real. You lower your head and press on toward Whitechapel Road, blending into the shivering, ragged tide of humanity that haunts these streets after dark. By day, this area is a deafening explosion of survival. Costermongers screaming their prices, cart horses striking the slick pavement, children weaving through the mud, desperate men crowding the docks for an hour of back-breaking labor. But the night strips away the noise and leaves only the desperation. You pass a narrow doorway where a group of women huddle together, their shawls pulled tight across hollow, bruised faces. They are passing a bottle of gin, their eyes darting nervously up and down the street. They look at you as you pass, not with curiosity, but with a cold, calculating assessment of threat. They are looking at your hands. They are looking at the pockets of your coat. They are looking to see if you are him. Because right now, he is the only thing anyone is thinking about. It is a terror unlike anything the city has ever known. It is not the terror of cholera, which sweeps through these slums and takes thousands without prejudice. It is not the terror of starvation, which is a slow, quiet roommate in every tenement. This is something new. This is a predator. A ghost made of flesh and bone who steps out of the fog, does the unthinkable in absolute silence, and vanishes back into the mist before the blood can even pool on the stones. You take a sharp left, trying to shake the rhythm of the boots behind you. You are entering Buck's Row. It is a grim, suffocating trench of a street. On one side, a sprawling warehouse. On the other, a row of cramped, terraced houses, their windows dark, their inhabitants exhausted by 14-hour shifts in the sweatshops. It was here, at the end of August, in the suffocating hours before dawn, that the nightmare truly took shape. You walk along the exact path. The pavement here is uneven, slick with a greasy layer of London grime. You keep close to the wall. Mary Ann Nichols walked this same line. 43 years old, her life battered by workhouses, lost children, and the crushing weight of simply trying to exist. She needed 4 pence. That is the magic number in Whitechapel. 4 pennies. That is the cost of a bed in a common lodging house. A coffin-shaped wooden box, or a hammock strung across a room packed with 60 other sweating, coughing, dying people. It is wretched, but it is a roof. Without 4 pence, you sleep in the doorways, or on the streets, or you walk. Marianne had her DOS money earlier that night, but she drank it. She needed to earn it back. Imagine her walking where you are walking right now. The fog was just as thick, the gaslight just as weak. She was likely tired, her boots worn through at the soles, her clothes damp. She was looking for a client. She found someone. Or someone found her. You stop at a pair of large wooden gates leading to a stable yard. It is completely dark. This is the spot. A carman walking to work at 3:40 in the morning saw what he thought was a discarded tarpaulin lying in the dirt. He stepped closer. The shadows shifted. He realized it was a woman. He thought she was drunk, or perhaps sleeping. He called another man over. They touched her face. It was cold. They couldn't see the blood at first. It was too dark. It wasn't until the constable arrived with a bullseye lantern that the true horror of Buck's Row was illuminated. The violence wasn't just a murder. It was an obliteration. A furious, precise, anatomical desecration performed in the pitch black, right under the noses of dozens of sleeping people behind these very brick walls.
For me here.
Not a single person heard a scream. Not a single person heard a struggle. The silence of it is what broke the city's nerve. You listen to the darkness now. The dripping of water from a broken gutter. The scuffling of a rat in the debris. And then, the soft crunch of a boot on gravel. Much closer now. At the top of the street. Your breath catches. You push off the wall and walk faster, your heart hammering against your ribs. You need to get back to the crowds, back to the light. You weave through a narrow, foul-smelling alleyway that spits you out near Hanbury Street. The air here feels heavier, thick with the smell of the Spitalfields Market rotting cabbage and the metallic tang of the nearby slaughterhouses. That is the camouflage he uses. In Whitechapel, a man walking down the street at 3 a.m. with blood on his apron isn't a monster. He's a butcher. He's a tanner. He's just a man coming off his shift. The environment itself hides him. Number 29 Hanbury Street looms ahead, a towering, dilapidated lodging house packed with desperate souls. The front door is open, swinging slightly on broken hinges. It is always open. People come and go at all hours. You step onto the pavement outside it. You look at that dark, gaping doorway. Annie Chapman walked through that door. September 8th. Dark Annie, they called her. 47 years old, dying of tuberculosis, her brain starved of oxygen, her body failing. She had been turned away from her lodging house because she didn't have her 4 pence. She walked out into the early morning gloom to find it. She met a man. A witness saw them standing just a few yards from where you are standing now. The witness described a man in a dark coat, a deerstalker hat. Just a shape, really. A silhouette. Annie asked him a question. The man said, yes. That was it. One word. They walked through that open door, down the narrow, suffocating hallway, out into the cramped, fenced-in backyard. You stare into the blackness of the hallway. You can almost hear the soft creak of the floorboards. The yard was surrounded by houses. Windows looked down directly onto it. The sun was just beginning to touch the sky, turning the fog a sickly, bruised purple. And yet, again, nothing was heard. No cry, no desperate plea. just the terrifying surgical precision of a phantom. When a resident walked out into the yard hours later and saw what had been done to Annie Chapman, the sheer savagery of it sent him sprinting into the street screaming. The police surgeons who arrived were baffled. The killer had worked with the skill of a physician or a slaughterman, removing organs in the near dark in a matter of minutes. Panic exploded. Pure, unadulterated mob terror. As you walk away from HANBURY Street, you can feel the residue of that panic. The streets around you feel like a powder keg. If you run, if you look suspicious, if you carry a black bag, the crowd might turn on you. Innocent men have been chased through these alleys by mobs carrying torches and knives, screaming for blood. The police are powerless. The Vigilance Committee patrols the streets with heavy wooden clubs, their boots clattering in the dark, looking for a shadow they cannot catch. You turn south, heading deeper into the labyrinth. The fog is rolling off the Thames in thick, suffocating waves now. The gas lamps are completely useless, their light dying just inches from the glass. You are practically blind. You navigate by touch, running your hand along the freezing, wet brick walls to keep your bearings. Then, you hear it. Not one set of footsteps anymore. A heavy, rhythmic splashing. A police patrol. 2 constables emerge from the mist, their heavy wool coats dark with condensation. They carry lanterns, the beams slicing through the fog, illuminating the swirling dust and smoke. They look at you. Their eyes are exhausted, paranoid, and utterly defeated. They grip their truncheons tightly. They do not say a word as they pass. They know what you know. They are walking a beat, turning a corner every 15 minutes. They are a clockwork presence in a chaotic world, and the killer knows their schedule. You are approaching Berner Street. The air here is choked with the smell of unwashed bodies and cheap tobacco from the nearby working men's club. It is the night of September 30th, the double event. The night he proved that the police, the patrols, and the mobs meant absolutely nothing to him. Elizabeth Stride was found here, in a pitch-black courtyard next to the club. Her throat was cut, but the rest of her body was untouched. He was interrupted. A cart pulled into the yard, the horse shying away from the darkness. The killer had to step back into the shadows, melting away into the fog before the driver even realized what he was looking at. You stand at the entrance to Dutfield's yard. It is a suffocating, claustrophobic dead end. He was in there, trapped. He must have slipped out right behind the cart, invisible, silent. But he wasn't finished. The bloodlust was entirely unquenched. You begin to walk fast. Your chest is tight. The adrenaline is burning in your veins. You are tracking his path now. He left Berner Street, a man who had just slit a woman's throat, and he walked straight into the City of London, the most heavily policed square mile in the entire world. He had 45 minutes. 45 minutes to navigate the winding, fog-choked streets, avoiding the rattling carriages, the drunken sailors, the frantic police patrols. He was hunting again. You pass through an archway, the sound of your boots echoing loudly off the stone. You enter Mitre Square.
Don't let him get away.
It is desolate.
There he is. Get him now.
3 towering warehouses and an empty house enclose the square, leaving only 3 narrow exits. It is a trap. The gaslight here is slightly brighter, but the corners of the square are draped in absolute darkness. Constable Watkins walked into this square at 1:30 in the morning. He swept his lantern across the cobblestones. It was empty, completely silent. He walked out to continue his beat. You stand in the center of the square. It is agonizingly quiet. He came in through the passage just moments later, and he brought Catherine Eddowes with him. She was 46, carrying nothing but a few pawnbroker's tickets and a piece of old soap. She had just been released from a police cell for being drunk. She walked straight into the arms of the devil. Constable Watkins returned to Mitre Square exactly 14 minutes later. 14 minutes. In that impossibly small window of time, the killer murdered her, mutilated her with an astonishing, terrifying ferocity, removed her organs in pitch darkness, and vanished. No blood trail, no sound, no witnesses. Just a ruined body in the darkest corner of the square, discovered by the trembling beam of a policeman's lantern. You look at that corner now. The shadows there seem to breathe. They seem to pulse with a dark, electric energy. You step backward, your eyes fixed on the blackness. And then, a sound shatters the silence. A cough. It comes from the alley directly behind you. You spin around. The fog swirls.
Of course I did.
A figure is standing at the edge of the passage.
That wasn't my fault.
It is just a shape. A tall man in a dark overcoat, a hat pulled low over his eyes. He is standing perfectly still, watching you. Your mouth goes dry. Your muscles lock tight. This is the moment your primitive brain takes over. The fight or flight response screaming in your ears. You cannot see his face. You can only see the utter stillness of his posture. He takes a step toward you. You don't wait. You turn and run. You sprint out of Mitre Square, your boots slipping violently on the wet cobbles.
What is it?
You tear through the alleys, the cold air burning your lungs. You crash through the fog, passing startled drunks and angry women, your eyes wide with blind panic. You don't know where you are going. You just know you have to get to the lights. You have to get to the main road. But the streets of Whitechapel are a maze designed to trap the desperate. You take a wrong turn. You take another. The alleys grow tighter. The smell of decay grows stronger. You stumble to a halt, gasping for air, clutching a cold, damp brick wall to keep from falling. You look around. You are in Dorset Street, the worst street in London. A place so violent, so depraved, that the police only walk it in pairs. The buildings here lean over the street like rotting teeth, blocking out whatever stars might exist above the smog. And just a few feet away from you is a narrow, covered archway. Miller's Court. It is November 9th, the climax of the horror, the grand finale. Every other murder happened outside, in the cold, in the dark, rushed and pressured by the threat of discovery. But here, at the end of this dark little tunnel, is room 13, Mary Jane Kelly's room. She was 25, the youngest. Beautiful, they said, but broken by the same relentless machinery of poverty that crushed them all. She had a room. She had a lock on her door. But she owed rent, and she had lost her key. So she reached through a broken window pane to unlatch the door from the inside. You walk slowly down the covered passage. The darkness is absolute. It feels like walking into a tomb. You stand outside the door of room 13. It was raining that night. A heavy, freezing downpour. People heard her singing in the early hours of the morning. A sad, sweet Irish ballad echoing through the miserable courtyard. A violet from Mother's grave. And then, the singing stopped. He didn't have 14 minutes this time. He didn't have to worry about patrols. He had a private room, a fire in the grate. He had hours. When the landlord's assistant came to collect the rent the next morning, he got no answer. He reached through the broken window, pulled aside the ragged curtain, and looked inside. What he saw broke the minds of the men who had to clean it up. The police surgeon, a man who had seen the worst of humanity, was visibly shaken, unable to comprehend the sheer apocalyptic scale of the violence inside that tiny room. It wasn't a murder. It was the complete, meticulous disassembly of a human being. It was the work of someone entirely untethered from reality, yet possessed of a terrifying, methodical calm. You back away from the door. You back out of the passage, stepping into the freezing mud of Dorset Street. The murder stopped after that. The fog swallowed him whole, and he was never seen again. You stand in the miserable, shivering heart of the East End, the adrenaline slowly draining from your blood, leaving you cold and exhausted. The footsteps that were following you are gone. The figure in the alley is gone. And as the adrenaline fades, the true horror of this place finally dawns on you. The ultimate, devastating twist in the story of Jack the Ripper. You look at the men walking past you now. A dock worker with a heavy brow. A clerk in a worn suit. A butcher carrying a bundle of tools. A doctor with a black leather bag. None of them have fangs. None of them have glowing red eyes. None of them are monsters creeping on all fours through the shadows. They are just men. The terror of Jack the Ripper wasn't that he was a supernatural phantom. The terror was that he looked exactly like everyone else. He was the man sitting next to you in the pub. He was the man walking behind you on the pavement. He was the man who smiled at Annie Chapman, tipped his hat, and spoke softly enough that she trusted him to walk with her into the dark. He didn't hide in the shadows. He hid in the light. He hid in the suffocating normality of the crowd. The fog is beginning to lift, just a little. The amber glow of the gas lamps flickers, fighting against the encroaching dawn. The sounds of the waking city begin to replace the terrifying silence of the night. Cartwheels clatter. A whistle blows in the distance. You survived the walk. You survived the night. But as you turn up your collar and begin the long walk back to safety, you pass another man in a dark coat, his face obscured by the brim of his hat, walking quietly in the opposite direction. He doesn't look at you. He just keeps walking, his boots striking the wet cobblestones with a steady, rhythmic cadence. Click, clack. You stop, and you realize that you will never, ever be able to walk in the dark again without wondering. Without asking yourself the only question that actually matters when the fog rolls in and the lights go out. Is the monster a ghost of the past? Or did he just walk right past you?